My phone buzzed at 2:11 in the morning, lighting up my bedroom like a tiny police siren, and the notification said I had a close family match. Not a distant cousin, not a second or third anything. Close. The kind of close that shouldn't exist unless someone has been lying for a very long time. My name is Nora Larkin. I'm 33 years old, dark-skinned, born and raised in Tacoma, Washington, and up until that moment, I thought I had a boring, well-documented family history. The kind you don't question because nothing ever seems off enough to poke at. I wasn't even awake on purpose when it happened. I'd fallen asleep scrolling on my phone, one hand still resting on my stomach, the other tangled in my charger cord. The DNA app notification must have come through earlier, but my phone was on Do Not Disturb. It slipped past anyway. Close family match detected, it said, bold and cheerful, like it was congratulating me. I remember thinking, half asleep, that's not possible. I'd ordered the test 3 weeks earlier after my coworker showed me her results in the break room. She'd laughed about being part Scandinavian, part something else she couldn't pronounce. It looked harmless. I work as a benefits coordinator for a regional hospital network. I'm surrounded by charts, forms, percentages. Data comforts me. So when the kit went on sale, I paid with my debit card without thinking twice and left it on my counter for days before finally spitting in the tube one Sunday morning. My boyfriend Caleb had been sitting at the table that day, scrolling through sports scores, barely looking up when I sealed the box. I didn't care. I wasn't looking for anything dramatic. I just wanted to see the health side of it. Vitamin absorption, sleep markers, something mildly interesting. Not this. I pushed myself up in bed and opened the app, my thumb suddenly shaky. The screen loaded slowly, like it was dragging out the moment on purpose. Then I saw it. A profile photo placeholder and a name I didn't recognize. A percentage underneath that made my chest tighten. 24%. I stared at it for a full minute, waiting for the number to rearrange itself into something less alarming. It didn't. According to the app, this person wasn't a fluke. They weren't an error. They were close enough to be a half-sibling. I sat there in the dark, listening to the low hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen, my mind running through every version of my life I'd ever been told. My parents had been married for years before I was born. I had one older brother. No secrets, no scandals, no whispered family drama at holidays. My phone vibrated again. This time it wasn't the app. It was a message request. "Hi," it said. "I know this is weird, but did your parents ever go to Soundview Fertility Center?" My heart dropped so hard I felt it in my throat. Soundview. The name wasn't supposed to mean anything to me. And yet, suddenly, it did. I could see my mother's old file box in my head, the one she kept in the hall closet. Medical papers, insurance letters, things she never liked anyone touching. I had seen that word once, years ago, without understanding why it stuck. From the other side of the bed, Caleb shifted in his sleep. I glanced at him, then back at my phone. My finger hovered over the screen. I didn't answer right away. Instead, I refreshed the app. That's when I saw the group chat invitation waiting underneath the message. Halden Kids, private. There were already 9 people in it, and somehow, deep down, before I tapped anything at all, I knew my life had already split into a before and an after. My phone stayed warm in my hand long after I locked the screen again. I didn't accept the group chat right away. I just sat there in the dark, listening to Caleb's breathing beside me, wondering how something so small could suddenly feel so heavy. I read the invitation name again. Halden Kids. Private. The word kids made my stomach twist. It sounded casual, familiar, like a joke someone would make in a family group text. But nothing about this felt like a joke. I opened the message request instead. "Hi," the person had written. "I know this is a lot to drop on a stranger. I'm trying to be careful, but I matched with you tonight and I'm pretty sure we share a biological parent." The name on the profile was Avery Collins. No photo yet, just the default silhouette. I typed and deleted 3 different responses before finally writing, "I just saw the results. I don't understand how this is possible." The reply came almost instantly, like they'd been waiting with their phone in their hand. "I said the same thing," Avery wrote. "That's why I started asking questions." Another message followed before I could respond. "Did your parents ever mention fertility treatment?" My chest tightened. I glanced toward the bedroom door, then back at Caleb. He hadn't moved. His phone was face down on the nightstand, charging. For a second I considered waking him up, forcing him to sit up and look at the screen with me. But something stopped me. A small, instinctive voice that said, "This is yours first." I typed slowly. "Not really. My mom mentioned help once when I was a kid." "That's it." Avery responded with a single line. "That's how it started for all of us." That word again. Us. Before I could ask anything else, my phone buzzed with a notification that made my pulse spike. "You have been added to Halden Kids, private." There was no dramatic sound, no fanfare. Just a quiet shift, like a door closing somewhere behind me. I tapped into the chat. Messages filled the screen immediately, stacked on top of each other like they'd been waiting for me. New match joined. "Hey. Welcome, I guess. Sorry you're here." That last one landed harder than the others. I scrolled up slowly, reading from the top. Names, short introductions, ages, cities. Everyone sounded cautious, polite, almost painfully normal. "I'm Jamie, 31, Portland. Marcus, 34, Federal Way. Lena, 29, Olympia." They talked like co-workers meeting for the first time on Zoom, not people who might be biologically related. One message stood out, longer than the rest. "Just to set expectations," someone named Ruth had written. "Nobody is saying anything definitive yet. We're comparing info and documents. If this is overwhelming, it's okay to mute the chat or leave." Mute the chat. Like that was an option. I finally typed. "Hi, I'm Nora. 33, Tacoma." A few people reacted with the little waving hand emoji. Someone typed, "Glad you found us," then deleted it, replaced it with, "Sorry you found us." I didn't respond. I kept scrolling. Someone had shared a screenshot from the DNA app showing the same percentage match I had. 20-something%. Half sibling territory. Under it, they'd circled the shared surname that none of us recognized. Another person had posted a photo of a yellowed receipt. The edges were frayed like it had been folded and unfolded too many times. Soundview Fertility Center was printed across the top. My throat went dry. That was when the name finally appeared in the chat. "Has anyone else noticed that most of our parents were patients at Soundview between 1989 and 1994? No one answered for a few seconds. Then another message popped up. "Yes." Then another. "Same here. I found it on my mom's old insurance records." My parents admitted it after I showed them the match. I felt like I was reading something I wasn't supposed to see yet, like overhearing a conversation through a wall. Avery tagged me directly. "In Nora, I don't want to freak you out, but did your parents ever live near North Shore back then?" North Shore. Another name that made my head buzz. I set the phone down and pressed my palms into my eyes. Memories started surfacing in fragments. The smell of my childhood home. The way my mom used to get tense when medical forms came in the mail. The way my dad never talked about my birth story beyond, "You were early, but healthy." I picked the phone back up. "I think so," I typed. I'd have to ask my mom. Caleb shifted beside me, rolling onto his back. His arm brushed mine, and I flinched like I'd been caught doing something wrong. I locked the screen and lay back down, staring at the ceiling. My heart was still racing, but underneath it was something else. A slow, creeping sense that the ground under my life wasn't as solid as I'd thought. I didn't sleep after that. I just waited for morning. By the time my alarm went off at 6, my head felt thick and swollen, like I'd been crying even though I hadn't. Caleb stretched and yawned, then glanced at me. "You okay?" he asked. "Yeah," I said automatically. "Just didn't sleep great." He nodded, already reaching for his phone. I watched his face as he scrolled. Nothing. No reaction. No sign that the world had tilted overnight. In the kitchen, I poured coffee I didn't want and leaned against the counter while Caleb talked about a showing he had later that day. A young couple, first-time buyers. He joked about how they'd probably bring their parents and their parents' opinions. Normally, I would have smiled. Today, every word felt distant. When he finally paused, I said, "I got my DNA results." He looked up, just for a second. "Oh yeah?" he said. "Anything interesting?" "There's a close match," I said carefully. "Like, really close." He shrugged. "Those things mess up all the time." I studied his face. He wasn't looking at me now. He was opening the fridge, scanning for creamer. "They think I might have a half-sibling," I added. That got his attention. He turned slowly, his expression tightening in a way I'd never seen before. "That's ridiculous," he said. "Your parents have been married forever." "That doesn't mean—" "Babe," he interrupted, forcing a laugh. "Those apps exaggerate. People freak themselves out for nothing." I didn't argue. I just nodded and took a sip of coffee that tasted like cardboard. He kissed my forehead before leaving, lingering half a second longer than usual. "Don't spiral," he said gently. "Okay?" The door closed behind him, and the apartment felt too quiet. I opened the DNA app again. 3 new notifications, 2 new close matches. The group chat had grown. At work, I tried to focus. I answered emails. I reviewed enrollment forms. I scheduled a benefits webinar. But every time my phone buzzed in my pocket, my heart jumped. During my lunch break, I sat in my car and scrolled the group chat properly for the first time. People were sharing timelines, birth years, hospitals, cities. Patterns were starting to emerge. Most of us were conceived within an 18-month window. Our parents were told the donor was anonymous. Same doctor keeps coming up in records. Then someone dropped a link. It was an archived web page, an old staff directory from Soundview Fertility Center, saved on the Wayback Machine. The page took a second to load. Then it appeared. There were 5 names listed: nurses, lab techs, and 1 doctor, Dr. Miles Halden. The name felt like a weight pressing down on my chest. I stared at it, my pulse pounding in my ears. The photo beside the name was grainy and old, but the face was unmistakable. The same nose I saw in the mirror every morning. The same heavy brow. The same shape of mouth. My hand started shaking. Messages exploded in the chat. "That's him! That's the name my mom remembers." My parents said he was very involved. Someone typed, "Is anyone else feeling sick right now?" I couldn't breathe. Miles Halden, Caleb's father. I locked my phone and leaned forward, resting my forehead against the steering wheel. Cars passed by on the street, people living their lives like nothing had changed, like this wasn't happening. When I finally sat back up, I had one thought repeating in my head. Caleb knows. I didn't have proof yet, but the way he'd reacted that morning, the way he'd shut it down so fast, the way he'd told me not to spiral. I opened my phone again, my fingers numb. In the group chat, Someone had typed a single sentence that made my stomach drop. If this is true, it means the donor wasn't anonymous at all. I stared at the screen, the realization settling in slowly, heavily. If this was true, then none of this was an accident, and the people closest to me might have known all along. I didn't confront anyone right away. That surprised me. I always thought if something big ever cracked open in my life, I'd go straight at it. Ask the hard questions. Demand answers. But real life didn't move like that. Real life still required me to show up to work, answer emails, and sit in traffic. The next few days passed in a strange, flattened way. Everything looked normal, but nothing felt solid. I went to the office, scanned my badge, made small talk in the elevator. People complained about parking and coffee prices. I nodded at the right moments. Inside, I was quietly inventorying every memory I had of my childhood, trying to see which ones still made sense. The group chat stayed active, but calmer now. Less speculation, more documents. People were sharing screenshots of old insurance statements, intake forms, clinic appointment summaries pulled from patient portals their parents still had access to. No one was panicking. That almost made it worse. The tone was careful, procedural, like we were all standing around the same broken appliance, reading the manual together. I mostly observed. I didn't post much. I didn't know what I was ready to say. On Thursday evening, I stopped by my parents' house, unannounced. I told myself it was casual, that I was just in the neighborhood. That was only partly true. The other part of me needed to see my mother's face when I said the word out loud. She was in the kitchen when I arrived, reorganizing a drawer that never seemed to stay organized. Receipts, rubber bands, old gift cards. She smiled when she saw me, then frowned slightly. "You look tired," she said. "I am," I said. It wasn't a lie. We talked about nothing for a few minutes. Weather, my brother's new job, a neighbor's noisy dog, the normal scaffolding of conversation. Then I said it. "Mom?" I asked. "Did you ever go to a place called Soundview Fertility Center?" Her hands stopped moving. She didn't look at me right away. She closed the drawer slowly, like she needed the sound of it finishing before she could turn around. "Why are you asking that?" she said. "I took a DNA test," I said. It showed something unexpected. That was enough. She sighed, the kind of sigh that comes from deciding not to lie anymore, rather than wanting to tell the truth. She leaned back against the counter and crossed her arms, not defensively, just tired. "Yes," she said. "We went there." "We?" I asked. "Your father and I," she said. "Before you were born." I nodded. My heart was beating faster, but my voice stayed even. "Did they use a donor?" She hesitated, then nodded once. "They said it was anonymous," she added quickly. "Screened. Safe. We didn't want details. We just wanted a baby." I let that sit between us. I believed that part. I could see it clearly. Two people wanting a child, trusting the system they were handed. "Do you remember the doctor's name?" I asked. Her eyes flicked away, just for a second. "No," she said. Too fast. I didn't push. Not yet. I just said, "Do you still have the paperwork?" She shook her head. "Most of it's gone. We moved twice. Things get lost." I knew then that wasn't true. My mother never lost paperwork. She kept instruction manuals for appliances she no longer owned. If something was gone, it was because she had decided it didn't need to exist anymore. I stood up a few minutes later and hugged her goodbye. She hugged me back, tightly, like she was afraid I might disappear if she didn't. That night, at home, I finally asked Caleb the question I'd been avoiding. "Did you ever hear anything about your dad and that fertility clinic?" I said. He didn't pretend not to know what I was talking about. He sat down across from me at the table, folded his hands, and said, "Nora, this is not something you want to dig into." That was his answer. Not denial, not confusion, a warning. I looked at him, really looked at him, and realized something simple and unsettling. He wasn't surprised. Later, alone in the bedroom, I opened the group chat again. A new message sat at the bottom, posted minutes earlier. "Someone found a consent form." It read, "The donor code isn't anonymous." I stared at the screen, understanding settling in quietly, heavily. This wasn't about what we had just discovered. Nothing exploded after that. No dramatic confession. No sudden collapse of relationships. Things just shifted. The group chat settled into a quieter rhythm. Fewer emotional messages, more attachments, PDFs, cropped photos of old forms, notes people had typed up after talking to their parents. Someone created a shared Google Drive and posted the link with a short message. Just so everything's in one place. I appreciated that. The order of it. It made the situation feel manageable, even if it wasn't. At work, I stayed later than usual, partly to avoid going home, and partly because it was easier to focus on spreadsheets than on what I hadn't said out loud yet. I processed claims, answered a few tense emails from employees about coverage changes, and sat through a meeting where no one noticed I hadn't spoken once. On the bus ride home, I scrolled through my phone and reread Caleb's text from earlier that day. "Let's not talk about this tonight. I had a long day." He hadn't asked how I was. He hadn't asked what I'd found. When I got home, he was already there, shoes kicked off near the door, watching something on TV with the volume low. We ate dinner standing up in the kitchen. Leftovers. Plastic containers. Nothing about it felt intentional. Finally, I said, "I talked to my mom." He nodded but didn't look at me. "She admitted they used a donor." I continued. "She wouldn't say who." That got his attention. He turned, leaned back against the counter. "Okay," he said carefully. "That doesn't mean anything bad happened." I didn't say it did. "But you're assuming things," he replied. "You're connecting dots that might not connect." I watched him as he spoke. He was choosing his words, editing himself in real time. "There's a doctor," I said. "The same name keeps coming up." He exhaled through his nose. "Nora. Just tell me if you've heard it before." He didn't answer right away. Instead, he picked up his phone, checked the screen, then set it face down again. "There were rumors," he said finally. "Years ago. Nothing proven." That was it. That was the admission. "Rumors about what?" I asked. He hesitated. "About donor boundaries. About him being too involved." I felt something tighten in my chest, but I kept my voice steady. "Did your family know?" "No?" He shook his head. "No, I mean, people talk, in any field." "Caleb," I said, "did you know this could involve me?" He didn't say no. That was the moment something quietly broke. Not loudly, not all at once, just a small internal shift, like realizing you've been standing on a cracked step. Later that night, after he fell asleep, I opened the group chat again. A new message from Avery sat unread. We pulled old licensing records. Dr. Halden wasn't just consulting, he was handling donor material directly. I stared at the message, then at the ceiling, then back at the message. I didn't feel angry. Not yet. Mostly I felt tired. The next day, one of the group members suggested speaking to a lawyer, not as a dramatic step, just to understand options. Someone else volunteered to make calls. No one pressured anyone else. It was all very measured. I didn't volunteer. I just sent the documents I had, the screenshots, the partial consent form my mom hadn't wanted to talk about. I didn't frame it as an accusation. I just uploaded it and logged out. That afternoon, Caleb texted again. "We need to be careful. This could get ugly." I typed back, "I'm not doing anything. I'm just not pretending I don't see it." He didn't respond. That evening, I checked our shared budgeting app out of habit. Rent had gone through. Utilities, too. Then I noticed a pending transfer, larger than usual, moving out of our savings. I clicked into the details. The destination account wasn't familiar. I stared at the screen, feeling something settle into place with a dull certainty. I didn't say anything to Caleb about the transfer right away, not because I was planning something, but because I needed to understand what I was looking at before I reacted. The next morning, I checked again. The pending status had cleared overnight. The money was gone. I opened the transaction details and took a screenshot, then another showing our balance before and after. It felt procedural, like something I'd do at work if an employee flagged an error. My hands were steady. My thoughts were not. When Caleb came into the kitchen, he was already dressed, phone pressed to his ear, speaking in the careful tone he used with clients. He nodded at me while pacing, then stepped onto the balcony to finish the call. I poured coffee and waited. When he came back in, I held up my phone. "What's this?" He glanced at the screen and then away. "It's temporary." "You moved almost all of our savings," I said. "To where?" He set his phone down, rubbed his face. "I told you I had a deal closing." "That's not an answer." "It's escrow," he said. "Just short term. I'll move it back." "You didn't ask." "I didn't think I needed to." I stared at him, trying to reconcile the person in front of me with the one I'd trusted with shared accounts and shared plans. "That money is not just yours." He exhaled sharply. "Everything is happening at once," he said. "My dad, this clinic thing, clients getting nervous. I needed to stabilize things." There it was again. His father, always orbiting the conversation, even when we weren't talking about him directly. "I'm not part of your damage control," I said. "That's not fair." "I didn't create any of this," I replied. "I didn't even go looking for it." He didn't argue with that. He just looked tired, defensive, cornered. I went to work that day with a knot in my stomach and a quiet resolve I hadn't named yet. On my lunch break, I opened my banking app and froze the joint account. It took less than a minute. No drama, just taps and confirmations. I didn't feel vindictive. I felt cautious. That afternoon, my phone buzzed with an unfamiliar number. "This is Elise Parker," the voicemail said. "I'm an attorney representing several individuals connected to Soundview Fertility Center. Your name came up in our records. If you're open to a brief conversation, please call me back." I didn't call her right away. I finished my workday. I rode the bus home. I cooked pasta and ate it alone. Then I called. She spoke calmly, professionally. She didn't promise outcomes or use emotional language. She explained what they were doing, gathering statements, reviewing timelines, assessing whether any civil claims were viable. She asked if I was willing to share what I knew. "I don't have much," I said. "Just documents and context." "That's often enough," she replied. After the call, I sat on the couch and stared at the wall for a long time. My phone buzzed again. A notification from the group chat. Someone had posted a link to a local news article. "Former fertility doctor under review after patient allegations surface." The article was restrained. No sensational language. It didn't mention names of children. It didn't speculate. It laid out dates, records, patterns, enough to make the issue real without making it loud. I scrolled through the comments. Some people defended him. Others shared similar experiences. A few said nothing should be assumed. I didn't comment. That night, Caleb didn't come home. He texted around midnight. "Staying with my brother. We'll talk later." I replied, "Okay." Over the next few weeks, things moved without me pushing them. More siblings came forward as their test results updated. The lawyer filed paperwork. The medical board announced a preliminary inquiry. Caleb's father resigned from a volunteer position he'd held for years. The clinic's website quietly went offline. None of it felt like revenge. It felt like gravity. Caleb's real estate listings started disappearing. One by one. Clients pulled out. Deals stalled. He blamed the market. Then he blamed the press. Then, eventually, he blamed me. "You didn't have to be involved," he said during one of our last conversations. "You could have stayed out of it." "I did stay out of it," I said. "I just didn't lie." We didn't break up in a dramatic way. We just stopped moving in the same direction. By the time I moved my things out, the story was already bigger than either of us, and for the first time since that 2:11 a.m. notification, I felt strangely calm. The truth hadn't destroyed my life. By the time everything officially ended, there wasn't a single moment I could point to and say, "This is when the truth finally came out." It was more like a slow clearing, the kind that happens after a storm you didn't realize had been building for years. The medical board released its findings first. The language was careful, almost dull. No emotional wording, just dates, procedures, and deviations from protocol. Dr. Miles Halden had used his own genetic material in fertility treatments over a period of years. The patients had not been informed. Consent had not been properly obtained. By the time the report became public, he was already retired, already off the board, already out of reach in most of the ways that matter. The civil case settled quietly. No courtroom drama, no cameras, just documents signed digitally, numbers transferred, and a statement released by the attorneys that said the matter had been resolved without admission of wrongdoing. Some of the siblings felt disappointed by that phrasing. Others felt relieved it was over. I felt mostly neutral. Justice, I learned, doesn't always look like punishment. Sometimes it looks like the end of pretending. My mother and I had one final conversation about it all. Not an argument, just a conversation. She told me she had suspected more than she ever admitted, even to herself. That she'd chosen silence because it felt safer than uncertainty. I told her I understood, even if I didn't agree. We didn't hug afterward. We didn't need to. We'd both said what we needed to say. Caleb never apologized. Not directly. He sent a long message instead, weeks after I'd moved into my new apartment, explaining how overwhelmed he'd been, how everything had collapsed at once. He said he still believed things could have been handled more privately. I read it once and didn't respond. That was the closest thing to closure we were going to get. Life didn't dramatically improve after that. It just stabilized. I kept my job. I learned a new bus route. I bought a secondhand couch and paid for it with my card like it mattered, because now everything did. I met two of my half-siblings for coffee once. We talked about work, traffic, and how strange it was to share a face with someone you didn't grow up with. We didn't promise to become a family. We didn't promise anything at all. And maybe that was the biggest truth of the whole thing. No one had set out to hurt me. No one had planned to betray me. But choices had been made. Quiet ones, convenient ones, and they had consequences. Not because I forced them, not because I demanded anything, just because reality eventually catches up. If you'd asked me years ago whether I believed in revenge, I would have said no. Now I think I understand it differently. Sometimes it isn't something you do. Sometimes it's just what happens when the truth is allowed to exist. That's my story. All of it. The parts I wanted and the parts I didn't. I'm curious what you think. Was what happened right or wrong? Do you think the truth should always come out, even when it costs people their comfort? And have you ever discovered something about your family or yourself that changed the way you saw everything? If you're comfortable, share your thoughts or your own experiences in the comments. I'll be reading them. And maybe we can talk about it together. It had simply made it impossible to keep living the wrong one. This wasn't just about the past anymore. It was about what people had chosen not to tell.